Captain Marcus Vale stood on the bridge of the cargo hauler Meridian's Edge, watching the stars through reinforced viewports. For 23 years, humanity had accepted their place as the galaxy's newest and weakest members. They hauled freight for the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, mined asteroids for the crystalline hegemony, and served as mediators in minor disputes between species that barely acknowledged their existence. The Galactic Assembly had made their position clear during humanity's first contact ceremony. Ambassador Crix of the dominant Vanguard Empire had delivered the verdict with cold efficiency. Earth species designation, auxiliary. Threat level, negligible. Assigned sectors, outer rim maintenance and resource extraction. Marcus remembered that day clearly. He had been a young officer then, filled with dreams of exploring the galaxy alongside advanced civilizations. Instead, humanity became the galaxy's janitors, cleaning up the messes left by their betters. Today felt different. The emergency beacon from the mining station at Kepler 442b had been broadcasting for 6 hours. Not unusual in itself, but the message was strange. Chief Engineer Tobias Grant had sent only 4 words. The sleepers are waking. As the Meridian's Edge approached the mining station, Marcus noticed something peculiar. The facility's power signature was off the charts, readings that should have been impossible for standard human equipment. The station itself looked normal from the outside, but energy scans revealed massive underground installations that hadn't existed in any blueprints. "Captain," called Navigation Officer Diana Cross from her station, "I'm detecting multiple ship signatures approaching from the asteroid field. They're not broadcasting standard identification codes." Through the viewport, Marcus watched as vessels emerged from behind floating rocks. These weren't the familiar, boxy human transports he knew. These ships moved with predatory grace, their hulls gleaming with materials he couldn't identify. They bore human markings, but their design was unlike anything in the Earth Defense Force database. The lead ship opened communications. The face that appeared on screen was human, but changed somehow. The man's eyes held depths that spoke of seeing beyond normal space, and when he smiled, it wasn't entirely reassuring. "Captain Vale," the stranger said, "I am Fleet Coordinator, Jackson Pierce. Welcome to humanity's true face. For 23 years, we've played the part of grateful newcomers while we prepared for what was always inevitable. The galaxy taught us that strength was the only currency that mattered. Today, we begin collecting what we're owed." Behind Pierce's ship, dozens more vessels were emerging from concealment. Each one radiated power that made Marcus's spine tingle. With recognition and fear, the sleepers were indeed waking, and Marcus realized that humanity had been anything but sleeping. The mining station's hangar bay had been transformed into something unrecognizable. Where Tobias Grant had expected to find standard excavation equipment, he instead discovered a vast underground facility stretching kilometers into the asteroid's core. Humans moved with purpose through corridors lined with technology that seemed to bend light around its edges. "Welcome to Site 7, Pierce explained as he led Marcus and his crew through the facility. "One of 47 installations we've built while the galaxy wasn't paying attention. Every mining operation, every cargo run, every maintenance contract was an opportunity to gather resources and establish hidden bases." Lieutenant Commander Beth Hawkins, Marcus's security chief, studied the humans they passed. They wore uniforms she didn't recognize, and their movements had a precision that spoke of extensive military training. "How long has this been operational?" "Since year 3 of contact," Pierce replied. "We realized quickly that the galaxy operates on a simple principle. The strong define reality for the weak. While Earth's governments played diplomacy with species that saw us as useful pets, others were preparing for the day we'd need to redefine our relationship with our neighbors. They entered a command center where holographic displays showed star maps with thousands of pulsing points throughout human space and beyond. A woman with silver-streaked hair and calculating eyes approached them. "Captain Vale, I'm strategic. Coordinator Victoria Nash, your arrival is fortuitous. The Vanguard Empire has just declared humanity a regulatory concern and authorized intervention forces to ensure our compliance with new restrictions." Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of restrictions? Population controls, technology limitations, mandatory relocation of excess human colonies to designated zones. Nash's voice carried the kind of cold anger that Marcus had only heard from career soldiers. "They've decided we're growing too quickly for their comfort." Through the command center's massive viewport, Marcus watched as more ships continued to emerge from hidden installations throughout the system. These weren't just military vessels, but massive construction ships, mobile factories, and what looked like entire habitats disguised as asteroid mining platforms. "The Vanguard fleet will arrive in 6 days, Pierce continued. 300 ships carrying peacekeeping forces to implement their new regulations. They expect to find scattered human colonies, poorly armed and completely dependent on galactic trade networks for survival." Nash smiled, and Marcus felt a chill. "Instead, they'll discover that humanity has been building our own networks. Every human colony has been connected through subspace relays they can't detect. Every cargo hauler has been modified with hidden weapon systems. Every mining operation has been preparing defensive installations." A young officer approached Nash with a data pad. "Coordinator, Sites 12 through 21, report ready status. The deep space observation posts confirm Vanguard fleet composition and trajectory." Marcus looked around the command center, finally understanding the scope of what he was seeing. "How many people are involved in this?" "Every human in space," Pierce replied simply, "and quite a few who never left Earth. The galaxy taught us that survival requires strength, preparation, and the willingness to surprise your enemies. We've been excellent students. The displays around them showed activation signals spreading throughout human space like wildfire, each point representing capabilities the galaxy had never imagined humanity possessed." Dr. Rebecca Stone had spent 15 years as humanity's chief xenobiologist, studying alien species and their technologies for the Galactic Research Initiative. She had always believed her work was purely academic, contributing to humanity's gradual integration into galactic civilization. Today, standing in the research laboratories beneath Site 7, she realized how naive she had been. Every sample you analyzed, every cultural report you filed, every technological assessment you completed, Nash explained, leading her through rows of experimental chambers, contributed to our understanding of galactic species' capabilities and weaknesses. Your work has been invaluable to our preparation. The laboratories contained technology that defied everything Rebecca thought she knew about human capabilities. Weapons that manipulated gravitational fields, shields that existed partially outside normal space-time, and most remarkably, beings that weren't entirely human anymore. "Meet the Adaptation Division," Pierce said, gesturing to a group of humans whose bodies showed clear modifications. Their eyes reflected light differently. Their movements suggested enhanced reflexes, and when they spoke, their voices carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions Rebecca couldn't perceive. "Voluntary enhancement," explained Dr. Kevin Torres, whose own modifications were more subtle but clearly present. "We studied every species we encountered, learned from their advantages, and applied those lessons to human biology. The galaxy never realized that our greatest strength wasn't our technology or our numbers, but our adaptability." Rebecca watched in fascination, as enhanced humans demonstrated capabilities that matched or exceeded those of naturally evolved alien species. One group moved through an obstacle course with the fluid grace of the aquatic nereid, while another solved complex mathematical problems with the processing speed of the cybernetic synthesis. The Vanguard Empire believes they're dealing with baseline humans, Torres continued. They've calculated their military response based on human limitations observed during first contact. They have no idea what we've become. Nash led them to another section where tactical displays showed real-time positions of the approaching Vanguard fleet. Admiral Keras leads their task force. He's known for efficient subjugation of developing species. His strategy relies on overwhelming technological superiority and the target species' inability to coordinate effective resistance. What he doesn't know, Pierce added, is that we've been monitoring Vanguard communications for 18 years. We know their tactical doctrines, their weapon specifications, and their psychological profiles. We've prepared countermeasures for strategies they haven't even considered using against us. Rebecca studied the tactical data, her scientific mind racing. The energy signatures from our ships, the technology I'm seeing here, none of this should be possible with our current understanding of physics. That's because our understanding advanced considerably once we stopped limiting ourselves to human perspectives, Torres replied. When you combine human creativity with alien knowledge and refuse to accept that anything is impossible, you discover that the universe has far fewer limitations than most species believe. The command center buzzed with activity as reports arrived from across human space. Every hidden installation was reporting ready status. Every modified human was prepared for what was coming. Every ship in the secret fleet was moving into position. The galaxy is about to learn, Nash said quietly, that humanity's greatest deception wasn't hiding our capabilities. It was convincing everyone, including ourselves, that we were limited by what others believed possible. Outside the viewport, the stars themselves seemed to be rearranging as humanity's true fleet moved through space. Admiral Keras of the Vanguard Empire studied the tactical displays aboard his flagship Dominion's Will with the confidence of someone who had subdued 17 species over his long career. The human colonies scattered throughout this sector would offer token resistance before accepting their new reality. It was always the same pattern with young species that grew too bold too quickly. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from several asteroid fields in the target systems, possibly hidden mining operations." Keras barely glanced at the readings. Humans excavating rocks. Hardly surprising. Begin standard suppression protocols. Disable any industrial facilities that might support resistance efforts. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations. As the Vanguard fleet moved into human space, the asteroids began to unfold. What had appeared to be rocky debris revealed itself as camouflaged installations of staggering size and complexity. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment swiveled toward the incoming fleet with targeting precision that shouldn't have been possible for human technology. "Admiral!" his communications officer called out in alarm. "We're receiving broadcasts from over 200 installations throughout this sector. They're all transmitting human identification codes, but our surveys showed only 12 human facilities in this entire region." Before Keras could respond, space around his fleet began to shimmer. Ships materialized out of what had appeared to be empty vacuum, their hulls bearing human markings but incorporating design elements from dozens of different species. These weren't the crude utilitarian vessels the Vanguard had catalogued during humanity's early expansion. These were predators, sleek and deadly, moving with coordination that spoke of years of preparation. Captain Nina Rodriguez commanded the human vessel Rising Thunder, one of the new generation of ships built in secret over 2 decades. Her crew wasn't entirely human anymore. Their enhanced reflexes and expanded perception, allowing them to operate technology that would have overwhelmed baseline humans. When the Vanguard fleet opened fire, expecting their superior weapons to quickly overwhelm human defenses, they discovered that humanity had learned from every species they'd encountered. Shields holding at 97%, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process targeting data at superhuman speeds. Their weapons are exactly as predicted. Commencing and counter-strike. The Rising Thunder's response was devastating. Instead of the simple kinetic weapons the Vanguard expected, humanity unleashed technologies that bent the rules of physics. Gravitational lances that crushed ship hulls, energy weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and most terrifying of all, viral programs that invaded Vanguard ship systems and turned their own weapons against them. Keras watched, in growing horror, as his carefully planned suppression force was systematically dismantled by an enemy that shouldn't have existed. How are they doing this? Our intelligence indicated primitive technology, limited industrial capacity, no significant military installations. His answer came in the form of a transmission that reached every ship in his fleet simultaneously. The human face that appeared on their screens belonged to someone Keras didn't recognize, but whose eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that made experienced military commanders nervous. "Admiral Keras," the human said, "I am Fleet Marshal Ryan Cross, representing humanity's true military capacity. For 23 years, you and your allies have treated us as children, playing with toys we didn't understand. Today, you discover what happens when children grow up and decide they don't need permission anymore." Around the Vanguard fleet, space continued to fill with human vessels emerging from concealment, each one representing capabilities that rewrote everything the galaxy thought it knew about this young species. 3 months after what historians would call the Battle of Recognition, Fleet Marshal Ryan Cross stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. The great chamber that had once dismissed humanity as auxiliary members now buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from hundreds of species struggled to comprehend the new reality. The human delegation was small but commanded attention in ways that would have been impossible before the revelation. Cross himself bore subtle modifications that allowed him to interface directly with the Assembly's translation systems, speaking simultaneously in dozens of languages, while his words carried harmonics that resonated with species across the biological spectrum. "Honored representatives," Cross began, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive amphitheater, "we gather today to discuss the future of galactic civilization following humanity's introduction of previously unknown capabilities. To the existing power structure, Ambassador Crix, the same Vanguard representative who had dismissed humanity decades earlier, shifted uncomfortably in his specialized seating arrangement. The confident authority he had once wielded seemed diminished by the knowledge that humanity's cargo ships could have vaporized his escort fleet at any time during the past 20 years. "The Vanguard Empire wishes to understand," Crix stated carefully, "how humanity acquired technologies that our greatest scientists believed impossible. Our analysis suggests violations of several fundamental physical laws." Cross smiled, and the expression carried implications that made even the most experienced diplomats in the chamber reconsider their assumptions about human nature. "Physical laws, Ambassador, are more like guidelines once you learn to think beyond the limitations of single-species perspectives. Humanity's greatest advantage has always been our willingness to learn from everyone we encounter, including those who considered us beneath notice. The holographic displays around the chamber showed images that redefined galactic geography. Human installations existed throughout supposedly empty space, connected by networks that operated outside conventional detection methods. Ships bearing human markings but incorporating the best technologies of dozens of species moved freely between star systems, no longer bound by the trade routes controlled by established powers. The question before this assembly, Cross continued, is not how humanity achieved our current capabilities, but what kind of galaxy we all want to live in now that the old assumptions no longer apply. Representative Zara Vex of the Neutral Worlds Coalition leaned forward in her speaker's platform. What are humanity's intentions regarding existing territorial agreements and trade arrangements? Humanity has no interest in conquest for its own sake, Cross replied. However, we also have no interest in returning to our previous status as the galaxy's maintenance crew. We propose a new model of galactic organization based on mutual respect and shared benefit rather than established hierarchies. The chamber erupted in discussions as species began to realize the implications. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic stability for millennia was dissolving, replaced by something unprecedented, a young species that had mastered adaptation itself. The galaxy taught us that strength determines truth, Cross said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We learned that lesson well, but we also learned something the established powers seem to have forgotten. Strength comes not from controlling others, but from helping them become stronger themselves. Outside the assembly chambers, human ships waited in formations that demonstrated capabilities the galaxy was still trying to understand. They represented not just humanity's emergence as a major power, but the dawn of an era where the impossible had become routine, and the sky itself belonged to those bold enough to claim it. The storm had broken, and the galaxy would never be the same.